There's some guys out there in the audience like, I don't want a woman that's like that, bringing that bullshit. Like, I want a woman that is calm. Guys, the calm ones, they're not nearly as fun. She's got fire, and sometimes it's hard to deal with. But most of the time, it's this life force in her that just turns me on, and I love it.
Do women want men's vulnerability?
Absolutely. But
if our sex lives aren't what we want them to be, we can do something about that.
it's so true. If your sex life isn't where you want, there's a reason for it. Women get cranky, irritable, critical, and uninterested in sex when
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less. Less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. And today I have a really beautiful episode. I'm talking about a topic that really comes up so much in the work I do with men is really talking to this wonderful man. The guest today is GS Youngblood, a man who's authored a couple of books, one of which I've been reading and I've read. As I mentioned, I started reading before baby came. The Masculine in Relationship, and it gives a blueprint to how we can show up to deepen our connection, to experience more love, have more emotional safety, deepen our connection with our feminine partners, and to lead and leading sexually. And we talk about all those things in this episode. He goes through his framework, like what it is, what the three areas of it are, as well as reactivity and why reactivity really harms our relationships. Really get into that, why our reactivity harms our relationships and where reactivity comes from as well, which is a really important point as well. He gives us a practice actually for reducing our reactivity and being more present and grounded with our partners, as well as we talk about some of the signs of there's a lack of connection in your relationship, where it is like what's why is there a lack of connection in your relationship, or the hidden signs that you may not have noticed in your relationship that are actually there, that are showing that your partner's dissatisfied and the relationship is actually going downhill, to use some of GS's words. And we talk about how we can kind of attune our nervous systems, downregulate our partners in the moments of stress and conflict as well. And we really dive into the nuts and bolts of what we don't learn as men or when we're boys, to how we can cultivate beautiful relationships. So super looking forward to you to listen to this one, because there's a lot of juicy information in there. You probably want to grab a pen and a pad and get all the goodness you can out of it. But without further ado, I'll let you jump into the episode. Welcome back, listeners. Today I have a wonderful guest with me, a wonderful man who is going to take us on a beautiful journey. I can just feel it through sitting in front of him. And I'm lucky enough to also have dived into his book, something that I started reading before. And if you know, my partner also felt pregnant and was really getting really inspired by how I can show up in my relationship in a way that really takes my relationship to new levels of depth and new heights and new depths. But I haven't actually got to finish it, unfortunately, because, baby came along. Well, baby is still in the oven, being cooked and grilled and so forth. But something I probably will dive back into. It's on my list of books to bring to the hospital, actually. Today, we have a wonderful guest of us, GS Youngblood. How are you doing today, GS?
I'm doing great, David. Thanks for having me on. I think maybe we should talk about what to expect when you're expecting instead of my book.
Well, I think I was funny. I was on the tube coming back from seeing the client today, and I was like reading about labor, and I was like, wow, this is labor as a journey. I was like, man, I'm going to have to do a lot of deep breathing, and a lot of this work that I've been doing over these last couple of years of like being present and being grounded is going to come in really, really handy in those hours or potentially days.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we're talking about like, gosh, how can I be there for my woman? But what better place to be there for her when she's actually in labor? She's going to need you the most. So it's great that you do this work. It's what that is a microcosm of what we're doing here. We're trying to be better men, not because we want to please our woman, but because we want to be better men. It feels good to be solid, grounded man who is there for his woman, and that's. I think that's the crux of what we'll talk about today with the work that I'm doing is I call it relational masculinity. It's like, how can I be in my own masculine power and very upright and more relational with my feminine partner? And you know, I've always believed that is an unbeatable combination, whether you're in the dating world and trying to attract somebody, or you're with your wife and wanting to have her trust you.
Yeah, because those two pieces together, it's like that first piece of being like present and grounded. It's, you know, comes from like the meditation and even in the breath. But the piece that a lot of men I think miss out is that relational piece, the skills of relating and the subtle layers that there can be beyond the kind of obvious things of speaking and listening, even those things we're not always that great at doing. But like, you know, you look back to the kind of pickup artist days and they became really obsessed with body language, but they really lost the subtlety of the energies, of the flow of the moment.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's a lot of the men's work out there is, you know, some of it's kind of like, I'm going to teach you to be an alpha dog, or it's the red pill community. And I actually like a lot of that because there's a lot of merit to that. There's a lot of clarity and directionality that's involved with anything around red pill or wanting to have more alpha energy. The problem is I think if you're a man in relationship, it's not enough. And you've got to then now continue your journey into the relational space. And that's what we're trying to do here.
So inside your first book, The Masculine in Relationship, you talk about a 3-part framework for how we can show up as better as men in relationship. I'd love you to talk about that 3-part and like maybe give us a little bit of a flavor of what they entail before we kind of go further on into the episode.
Sure. Yeah, we can dive into that. And before I go into the framework itself, you know, I'll just say that I felt like guys needed a framework. They needed something that, not paint by numbers so much, but it's like, just tell me what to do. Don't give me all this esoteric stuff. I mean, there's some teachers out there that they're teaching beautiful spiritual big picture. And at the end of the day, guys are like, well, that was cool, but I still don't know what to do. And so for me, it was important that it was very actionable for guys because just a lot of the stuff out there isn't as actionable as I think the readers want. So the framework is called the Masculine Blueprint, and it's got 3 elements to it. And the first element is respond versus react. So this is the quality of a man who is very grounded. There's like a quality of stillness about him. And I know you've done a lot of this work, and I imagine you notice that shift in yourself where you just got a little bit more stillness to you. It doesn't mean you're numb or stoic or disengaged. It just means your stillness, and then you can engage with the world from that place. There's an element of choicefulness to a man like this. Like you watch him and experience him, and you just feel like he's choosing how he wants to be, in the way he gestures, the way he might look across the room, the way that he would certainly speak to you. It's very choiceful. And all of these are qualities that we want to cultivate in ourselves, and so that we become less reactive and we become more responsive or choiceful in the way that we go through life. So that's the short version of the first element. And the second element is provide structure. And so, you know, this is the quality of a man who's got a lot of clarity. He's got a lot of, what I like to first talk about is inner clarity. You know, you really can't lead somebody else unless you have inner clarity on what you think the moment calls for. What is your inner wisdom about what you think would serve the greater good in this moment? whether it's just for yourself or inclusive of other people. And so this man has a lot of inner clarity, which he then expresses as outer direction and structure for both himself and the people around him. And that's the quality of a man who is providing structure in his world. And so there's the directionality of moving the ball forward, bringing, taking chaos and disorder and putting it into order and moving the ball forward on whatever the topic du jour is. Or it's structure. It's like how we're going to be. It may not be what we're going to do, but it's the how and we're going to do it. And it could be as setting a simple boundary around, hey, if your woman is being a little bit maybe verbally unkind, he might say, well, baby, pause for a second. We're not going to talk to each other that way. And I love you. I want to hear what you have to say, but we're not going to call each other names. And okay, so go ahead, but none of this name calling, babe. So he's setting some structure in how they're going to argue. So that's all of these are the qualities of direction and structure. And that's the second element, which is provide structure. The third element is create safety. And this refers to physical, financial, and emotional safety. And I don't talk a lot about physical and financial in this book. I'll probably do that in the next one. But I do talk a lot about emotional safety. And there is no greater determinant of a woman's openness to you, whether it's her heart open or whether she chooses to open her body to you. No greater determinant than the level of trust and safety that she is experiencing with you. And, trust is what you would expect. Very simply, it's you do what you say you're going to do. She trusts that if you say it, you're doing it. Safety is a little bit more complex. Safety is does she feel emotionally safe around you? Does she feel safe to show the messy insides that she wishes weren't so messy and crazy sounding, but they are. It's just part of the pure feminine nervous system at times. So, does she feel safe to show that to you and know that you'll be there holding space for that? And so we could go on and on about emotional safety. There's no more important topic, I think, in relationships than making your partner feel safe. So that's the third element of the blueprint, which is create safety. So I talked a lot. I'll just pause there for a second for comment.
Yeah, and there's it's that. When I've kind of going through them, it's like respond versus react. It's like to start with, over the first one, it's like you often see this in men where it's like everything is just almost like it's a program they're running in the moment with their partners. Like a partner says something to them and they just, the words have left their mouth or the action has left, or, if it's, even when someone's abusive, it's gone out of their mouth before, almost like they wish they could catch it and pull it back in, but they're unable to. What has it that as men we kind of live or exist in that space of being so reactive?
It's often out of fear. We hate to feel our woman's disappointment in us. It's kryptonite for us. Let me just say that as like a soundbite. A woman's disappointment is kryptonite for most men. So we don't want to be seen as wrong or bad or not enough or not competent or not having done it right. And, we're guys, so we're all about scoreboard. Am I doing it right or am I not doing it right? And it's not just the nice guys that do that. Like a lot of guys do that. It's just how we're wired in certain ways. And so, we don't want to feel the intensity of our reaction when our woman is disappointed in us. And so we do all kinds of things to make her not disappointed in us. So we get defensive. And we're like, no, wait a minute. You don't understand. I didn't say that. And that's not how that happened. They try to correct the facts, thinking that that's going to assuage the emotional wound that she's expressing to you. And it generally doesn't. But we're so desperate to make that uncomfortable feeling stop that we do all those things. So we get defensive, we get stony, we disconnect, we explain. All these mental things is generally where we go when we are trying to defend ourselves against this feeling of anxiety that comes from disappointment. So, circling back, the answer to your question is it's often a lot of fear. of being wrong, bad, or even left, like being the fear of abandonment, even if it's not actual abandonment, it can just be the cold shoulder. That's kind of an abandonment. So it's fear of all those things that we do that. And that creates that activated nervous system. And so as men, we have to go and start to work at the nervous system level, which is why I wrote that my second book on embodiment, because that's one of the most powerful ways to address being more reactive.
No. Yeah. And as you talk about there, like the fear of abandonment, it makes me think of kind of like our kind of childhood wounds and patterns. Like, how do you see from your work with men, and I know you run retreats and programs and one-to-one work, like what are some of the kind of childhood patterns that show up in a man's life that kind of get in the way of his ability to kind of respond and connect to his partner lovingly?
Yeah, this is the thing. It's so easy for childhood wounding to happen. It can even happen very innocently. And so I think your question is like, what are some of the flavors of that carry on in a childhood? And, if either of your parents showed overt disappointment in you, more than likely you're going to grow up to be a guy that kind of scrapes for approval. And, it's like really scary when, your wife or girlfriend is like not happy with you. So I think parents that showed their disapproval or dissatisfaction or disappointment is really painfully powerful. It could be somebody that like if your mother had an anger problem, and then your girlfriend or wife in the modern day gets angry, you're just going to see your mother in that. And what you'll see is not only the mother, but you're going to see the power differential that existed when you were a child. And it's the craziest thing, but that power differential carries forward 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You won't even know it, but you'll experience that if you have a situation that your psyche, your subconscious feels like it resembles kind of sort of that thing that happened 50 years ago. You could be a 55-year-old man and still experience that with your wife. It doesn't go away until you address it. It could be the most innocent one is you're in the crib, you wake up from your nap, you want to get held and fed, and your mom maybe took a phone call. Innocently enough. And then you're downstairs wailing and feeling abandoned and alone, and she can't hear you. And then she comes down 15 minutes later, and of course she's mortified, but it happens. So you have this visceral taste of what's it like to be utterly alone and vulnerable, and not vulnerable in a good way. And that gets burned into your nervous system. So now you're really scared of being left alone. And that's where guys get needy and clingy and they become pleaser nice guys simply so they won't be left alone. So those are some of the scenarios from childhood that carry forward into adulthood for a lot of men. A lot of my clients are suffering from that.
Yeah. I see myself, actually talk about myself, that, I had a very critical father. He was very quick to, he's a sort of father who I could come home with a report card of like B's. And the first question would be like, why didn't you get A's? And I'd be like, oh, okay. And it was always this kind of constant, even if it wasn't kind of direct criticism, it was like even the look on his face sometimes, it was like nothing was ever enough. And how that's manifested for me is actually in almost like never really actually seeking any sort of verbal like reassurance or approval from people, or finding criticism to be really difficult. Like when you talk about the dynamic, I can think of, in my relationship now, we've come such a long way, but even the moments where maybe she gives me some feedback about something, I can feel this small child in me that wants to like shrivel and like shrink away and hide. And I might even speak it out. I might say to my partner, I was like, oh, now I feel like I'm 8-year-old David and I just want you to fuck off. I want to go and hide in my room and play PlayStation or something. But it's
just be alone.
Yeah. But so many of us just don't have the awareness that it's even occurring in the moment. Often I see of men is that they have a story of like what they believe, what's going on in their mind, or what this, small child or this wounding is creating in them is a story. And they believe the story is actually occurring in the moment in front of them with their partners.
Yeah, it's funny. We're like reliving the past as if it's somehow relevant but it gets projected. It's like a movie that plays that's projected onto real life, and then we act like the movie's real, like you said. And yeah, it's that's part of what we're doing in this men's work is we're getting more aware of the ways that we do that. I don't think that there are mental supports and cognitive supports that we can bring to bear, like there I go again. Okay, I'm noticing, there I go again. So that's more of a cognitive noticing. You got to do the nervous system work. You got to do the embodiment practice that I referred to before every day. That's what I'm telling guys. You need a daily practice. Bar none, period, end of story. You need a daily practice. And that's the number one thing you can do, because once the nervous system comes down, then your cognitive intention has a little space to get in there and operate. But when you're triggered, there's no space for your cognitive intentions. They like go right out the window as soon as you get jacked up. And so that's where embodiment comes in, is really creating some spaciousness in your nervous system by grounding you. Then you can bring more choice and intention to bear to the moment.
So is there a particular practice that you'd recommend for maybe someone who, describe myself actually, like I'm in a conflict arises and the emotions get intense for me and I want to kind of like check out, escape. Is there a practice that you would recommend for the men listening to be like, to cultivate the capacity to be able to stay and with their difficult emotions and their partners?
Yeah. I give this whenever people ask for an example. I often give this one because I just find it so useful. I always hate to jump right into a practice, because one of the things that I'm really passionate about is what are the principles behind these practices? Like if somebody just comes to you with the latest cool Kundalini breathwork practice, like it's not that interesting for me, because most people don't know the principles behind these things and why they're doing them. And so I hesitate to jump into a practice. What I will say is that a lot of this is about where your awareness is. And often our awareness is on our thinking mind. So we're in a tight, tense situation with our woman. And of course our mind's going, oh shit, like she's pissed. What do I do? And then you've got projections on her that she's being an unreasonable bitch. And then you've got your fears coming up, and then you've got those movies playing. It's like chaos in there. So what we want to do is pull a little bit of our awareness away from all that chaos. And we want to put it somewhere in the now of like, what's actually happening? Well, there's no easier way to connect to the now than to focus on physical sensation in your body, because physical sensation is happening in the now and really only in the now. Thoughts are about future and past, but experiencing the physical is about now. So if you take some of your awareness and kind of turn it back into some chosen physical sensation in your body, it's going to have a powerful effect. And that effect is it's going to push out some of that rational cognitive thought and kind of anxiety driven thought. It's just going to push it out, and while your awareness rests kind of more in the here and now. And so one of the things that I like to teach guys is a technique I call split attention, where they're learning to have some awareness on the physical sensations in the body, and rest of your attention still in this relational space between them and other. So for you and I, it's like I can look at you, I notice you blinking, I notice you're nodding, so we're in a relational space here right now. But what I can do is then drop 50% of my attention down to, I'm going to do it by my butt, because my butt is in this chair right now and I'm sitting down. Gravity's pulling me down and pressing against the chair. The chair presses back up, and there's a sensation at that contact point, right? I can feel my sensation of weight. So what I'm going to do, David, is I'm just imagining like you and I are arguing about something, and it's, getting us jacked up. I'm feeling now, I'm just dropped 50% of my attention down, and I'm just feeling my weight, but I'm still talking to you. My brain is still working and interacting with you. And so you and I are having our argument and blah, blah, blah. And I'm upset, you're upset, but I'm feeling my weight at the same time. What that's doing is it's like clearing out that chaos, all that chaos of the mind that I was focused on. It's kind of like What's actually happening right now? Well, it's actually not that scary between the two of us. You know, you're a dude, I'm a dude. We're having an argument, and it's not nearly as scary as my mind made it out to be, because my mind is reacting to my wounds, and it's all this sort of toxic mess in there. So I'd say the next time you're arguing with your woman, I'll give this for you. Just tell yourself, remember my feet. Remember my feet. Let's say you're standing. Just drop some of your awareness and feel your weight on the ground while you're still with her. Don't go like, wait a minute, baby, I gotta do this exercise. Hold on. You gotta stay with her. And just say, remember my feet. Remember my feet. And just feel your weight a little bit while you're talking with her. And I think I can guarantee that you will get X% more present and X% less reactive. And whether that's 1% or 25%, either way, that's actually pretty damn good, because that's that much more space you have to then choose how you want to be. And you're going to be the person you want to be, not the person that your reactivity turns you into. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Because that space is the gap between the kind of stimulus and the response. And in that, as you said, that's where we have the space to choose, instead of having the kind of collapsed where it's like stimulus happens and response the reaction automatically happens.
Yeah. You hit it on the head. That's good Viktor Frankl quote.
And it got me thinking, because I think it's something I read in your book, actually, is something I see in men as well, is often they're in relationships and their relationships are maybe a bit disconnected, or their partner's a bit dissatisfied, and they don't notice. They don't notice that there's something that's not quite right in the relationship, or their partner's not quite happy. And this is a common thing. I've had men come to me and like, my partner wants to leave me, and it's come out of nowhere. They haven't noticed the kind of signs. And I guess my question is if a man is listening to this and he's wondering whether his relationship connection is maybe not as good as it is, what are some of the signs that men come to you with, or they tell you that their partners are putting to them that the connection of the relationship isn't where she is happy at?
Yeah, I think there's some obvious ones that, just compare to when you first met and compare to now. Does she laugh as readily? Is she as playful? Is she as kind to you as she used to be? If the criticism has gone up and her irritability has gone up and sexuality has gone down, those are all clear markers that there's a problem. And if she's a raging bitch to you, that's always bad. But also, if she's not raging at all, if she's sort of like, seems like she's just like, yeah, okay, fine, that means she's given up, that's even worse than if she's a raging bitch. Because if she's still calling you out, at least it's a good sign, is that she's still in and wants to be with you and wants to call you forth to be the man that you are capable of being. And that's a big problem. Is a lot of, women, they don't always communicate it in a clean way. Sometimes it's toxic, especially if they're really feeling frustrated over time. But we see it as complaining and them being kind of bitchy. But in some ways, it can be them actually calling you forth and reflecting back to you the impact of your behavior. And I think that's where a lot of guys get tripped up. They're just like, oh, she's just a cranky bitch. And it could be, well, bro, she might be actually reflecting back that there's no emotional connection, that you don't even know her, you don't understand her, you drop her from your attention and do all these things that are actually quite hurtful to her, but you're not seeing it. All you see is that she's upset all the time. So those are some of the signs that you can use to know that you're in trouble. Sexuality is a great barometer, by the way. But here's the thing: is in this men's work, we're training our awareness. Man, us men, we've got to. If there's sex once in a while and it's not blowing up, we think it's fine. But really, you have a little bit of your awareness on her and feel into her. And this is easier said than done. So this is what I train guys over time to do. But you got to feel into her. Like, what's going on over there? And have some awareness and understanding of her state. Be curious to know more when she says she's upset. Get curious about that. These are all things that men need to do in order to really know their woman, because you're right. Usually it's the guy that gets knocked off and he didn't see it. Well, it's because he didn't want to see it, because it's scary. It's scary to know that your woman is upset with you. It's scary to know that she's disappointed in you. And so we want to hide. We want to go, la, 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 you can't see me. Well, we can see you. And she sees the problems, and trying to Jedi mind trick her into not seeing the problems by ignoring them yourself rarely ever works. So anyway, those are kind of that's the collection of all the comments I would have about this common situation that you talk about, where the guy is so surprised. He's like, man, that came out of left field. Happened to me too. That was how it was for me 15, 16 years ago. Yeah, I was like, wow, I thought it was just the strain of having 3 kids, but it was much deeper than that.
Because there's also the kind of message we get as men around like how a relationship deteriorates over time. Like, oh, you're going to have less sex and your partner's going to get grumpy all the time. So a lot of men probably see these signs that you're describing here and just like, well, that's what my uncle told me, yeah, or my father told me. This is just how a relationship goes, and there's like just like, okay, yeah, this is how it is, and and there's like a not resignation, but it's more a resignation, but also a lack of belief that things can be better or can be different.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Along this, I mean, in some ways, this notion's there's a little bit of accuracy in this, like that's how things are. But I want to shift the filter on it. Women get cranky, irritable, critical, and bitchy, and uninterested in sex when we're not grounded, we're not leading, and not creating emotional connection. That actually is how it is. When we're not those 3 things, which is, maps to the blueprint, obviously. When we don't do those 3 things, they get all into that state. But you can shift on a dime and start to embody more groundedness, more leadership, and more capacity to build emotional safety for her. And then in most cases, she's going to come out of that. So instead of it's not like this glacial thing where over the course of 30 years, it goes irreversibly down into that. It can shift in and out of this state in a moment based on your way of being. So I've been with my woman for 12 years. She gets irritable, bitchy, and uninterested in sex when I'm not grounded and not leading and not creating emotional safety for her. But somehow, I can manage to pull it back too by inhabiting those qualities. So it's not, don't think of it as the arc of your life. Think of it as a moment to moment thing. And then it's right. Yeah, that's what happens. When you act like this, that's generally what happens. And this brings up a point that I want to say is the feminine their way of being is often a response to our way of being. Whereas it's our way of being is often kind of how we are and how we're wired and what our fears are. But their way of being is often in response to ours. And what that means is not that it's our fault. No, it's actually a much more empowering message here. It means we have the power to shift her way of being. We don't have to demand that she be different or hope that she be different or wait around forever for her to be different or just complain until she changes. We can actually change her by changing us. And to me, I feel like that's the most powerful, liberating message in this whole thing is this is all up to me and how I can do it. And I love that message for men. Guys, it's you have the power in your hands. Use it. Learn to use it. Learn the tools.
Yeah, that's powerful because so many men feel so powerless in relationship. Like they are at the behest of their partner and their moods. They are like a lone, for some reason, a lone runner in the storm that suddenly occurs, and they're just out in the kind of, say desert where they're just being battered by the rain and the wind. They don't really realize that there's like, they got agency.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. We are battered by our woman's emotions, and And I'll just repeat myself. It's like, and we have the power to stop it. We have the power to go wind and rain, stop. But we don't do that to our woman. We actually create some emotional safety. We actually get grounded. We actually lead her. And it's the equivalent of saying stop, but it actually opens her up, settles her down. And that's the thing, guys, is like, you're going to have arguments about all kinds of crazy topics that come out of left field. Number one job for you, settle her nervous system first. Don't argue when she's jacked up and when you're jacked up. Settle the nervous systems first. And you're going to be a lot more successful when you do that.
Can you dive into that a little bit more? As a term, like settle her nervous system first. There's a lot of men are thinking like, what do I do? How do I do that? What even is that? What was if my nervous system is like amped up?
Yeah. Well, here's an easy way to do it, or example, I guess. It's like, I know, my woman, I think they all do this, but I'll just say my woman, when she's getting worked up about a topic, her voice goes up like a whole octave, and she starts, talking at a very high pitch. And so the other day I just said, she complained at me about something, and I didn't address the topic head on, because that would have been addressing the content of the argument rather than the energy of the argument or the nervous system implications. And I just said, baby, I just noticed your voice go up an octave, and that usually means you're kind of worked up. And I'm wondering, can we just pause for a second? Let's just pause for a second. I want to hear what you have to say, and just take a breath, and then and then tell me what you want to tell me. So, and I don't know, it probably didn't sound as skillful as I did it. I did it with a lot of heart in the moment, but it gave her that pause, because then she noticed that she was all jacked up. Like, it's sometimes they don't even know they're jacked up. It's just their childhood wounding is back here, kind of injecting energy into this modern day situation. So I gave her the opportunity to self-regulate, because I reflected that back to her. I asked for a pause. And because I knew that she was all jacked up, and I know that when she's jacked up, she gets a head of steam and she's hard to deal with. And, she would tell you that too. So I gave her that opportunity to just take a minute and pause. And I didn't do it in a condescending way. It wasn't like, whoa, you're all jacked up, and I'm a higher being over here, and you're just a lowly person that's all jacked up, so please calm yourself. It wasn't like that. So you got to be really careful not to separate. You don't want to separate yourself from her. You want to say, oh, sweetie, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm right here. It's like, I'm with you, baby. Mm. And I notice your voice is going up, and can we just pause for a second? So that's a way to address the nervous system first. Does that make sense, that example?
Yeah, totally. It's being with, instead of, because I can imagine men hear this, and they especially if they have what they might describe as volatile or feisty or women, they're like, oh, I don't want to go there, because then suddenly I'm in this dynamic where I'm lording over her, or I'm telling her what to do. But like how you're describing it there is, it's a we moment, a team moment. Like I'm with you, as you described, like coming together in this moment, and noticing what's present, and then just softly and gently delivering what you are aware of, what you are observing from this kind of present moment, but also then being really clear with your desire to be with her even more deeply.
Yeah, exactly. You hit it on the head. Yeah. And as I was hearing you talk, it sort of made me think of a couple of things. You were talking about some women are feisty, and then you had some other adjectives. And there's some guys out there in the audience who are like, screw that, man. Like, I don't want a woman that's like that. She's bringing that bullshit. Like, I want a woman that is calm, And I would just say to those guys, the calm ones, they're not nearly as fun. And I say that with tongue in cheek, of course, but the part of your woman that's feisty is also the part of your woman that's a wild woman in bed. And of course I'm generalizing, but my woman just kept me interested for 12 years. We've had a juicy relationship. And one element of that, it's not the only element, one element of that is that she's got fire, and sometimes it's fucking hard to deal with. But most of the time it's this life force in her that just turns me on, and I love it. And that's, her fire is a one part of that. I think another part of that is my ability to handle her fire. And, you can keep a relationship juicy when you know how to handle the fire. So that's one thing that I want to say in relation to what you said. Then the second thing is, some guys are like, I'm not going to like be all soft and gentle. I'm gonna be like, no, baby, shut the hell up. You can't talk to me like that. I'm going to put the hammer down on her, kind of go in that like alpha. I'm telling you this, you do that with a woman that's got some agency and strength to her, it's just going to amp her up even more. She's going to feel even more misunderstood by you, even more not known, and even less emotional safety. And I'm telling you, it is not masculine to be fighting with your woman, to be constantly fighting with your woman. She's giving you the cold shoulder. You guys, that's not masculine. So, spare me the tough guy routine, because you're going to be fighting with your woman and out of relationship in 6 months. And is that really what you want? Like, is your sovereignty so important that you would actually just crater the relationship? Because I'm telling you guys, it's not a sign of a strong man when he's always fighting with his woman. And so you want to learn these tools that some of them are actually very heart-based, to quell the fire of your awesomely fiery woman and learn how to settle her down. Because when you learn those tools, she can come down like that. And then she gets back to her juicy, playful self that you love so much. And so keep that in mind, guys.
Yeah. When you talk about the constantly fighting, I just kind of see these images of a man who's quite immature, like being in this, like winning, needing to win the argument and be right and prove her wrong.
Yeah.
And this is, I do a little bit of couples work, and it's one of those energies I see in couples so often. Like I kind of call it like bringing the patriarchy into your relationship. It's like you just want to win every argument. You want to be right about every point. And it's like, what's more important to you, winning or loving?
Yeah. Yeah. Or winning or peace. Because you're not going to have a lot of peace if you're trying to win all the time, because she's probably trying to win as well.
Yeah. And as you were saying there about, there's two things that came to my mind, and maybe I'll say them at the same time and you just answer them in whatever ways feels good, is we kind of feel like we're in this era of, there's a lot of men being like, I want my woman to be in her feminine. I want her to be soft and open. And it kind of feels to me almost like a bit of an immature request in many ways, like like wanting the woman to be like that all the time. So their life is easy, actually. I'd love to speak into that. But also the other thing I see, and I was on a panel talk last night, and one of the questions from the audience was about this. A woman was saying, like a lot of men I meet, they meet me and I'm in this masculine energy and they're not interested in that, and they kind of move away. So I guess the question there is, as a man, there's many of us men with women who are very strong in the masculine energy in their life, making shit happen and business wise and so forth. Like, how can a man meet that energy and transmute that into something that feels good for both of them?
Yeah. Let's see. How do I answer that? It's a big question. I mean, it's kind of like the question that spans most of the work that we do. And let me just start by saying, in my answer, there's nothing compulsory here. Like, it's not like the woman is supposed to be in her feminine, and we're not going to get her into her or not going to make her get into her feminine or anything like that. It's, it's just all by choice. Let's hold it lightly like that. Before, lest people misunderstand what we're trying to do here. But I think the easy answer is evoke it. You don't ask for it. Can you please be more soft and feminine? Like, that never works. You're going to get the middle finger back to you, when you ask for that, or demand it, kind of shame her into it. You have to evoke it. And at the risk of sounding like I'm repeating myself, the masculine blueprint is how you evoke it. That's why I created it, in the form that it is. Guys, if you've got a strong woman and she's more in her masculine energy, do these three things. If she's like that, she's going to have a lot of fire, which means she's going to be coming at you at times with that fire. So get grounded, have a daily embodiment practice. And if you don't, then I'm just, I don't know what to say to you. It's like you're missing out on the biggest opportunity you've got. So when your woman feels your groundedness, your strong, fiery woman, when she feels your groundedness, and you can't be knocked off center when she gets a little, she's going to feel that. And that's going to be trust building for her. It's actually going to make her feel calm as well. Because the state of your nervous system transmits into her. So if you're jacked up, it just jacks her up. If you're grounded, she feels that and it starts to settle her nervous system and you start to co-regulate her. So again, if you've got a strong, fiery woman, one of the biggest things is to become a grounded man. She will feel it. Number two, if you've got a strong feminine woman, find some things to lead on and be like, baby, I got this. Just get on my ride. And whether that's you just whisk her out for a night on the town that you plan and don't even tell her about. You just like, be ready at 7. Or you plan a vacation, or, there's, I don't know, like the plumbing bursts or something. Like, just handle it. Don't wait for her. Don't leave it to her. Don't ask her what she wants to do about it. Just handle it. And I'm not referring to like, just go be a dictator. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm saying pick some things on which you lead. That's how you handle a strong woman who's not yet in her feminine. That's what gets her into her feminine. And then when that strong woman has emotional outbursts, which she will, it's human, know the skills to handle it. And so that could be empathy. That could be curiosity. I mean, these are all in chapter 14 of the book. Empathy, curiosity. If she's kind of getting you might need to use a little humor to kind of demolish her drama. And when you can skillfully do that, she feels safe. She feels loved. She feels handled. She feels protected by you. That takes a strong, fiery woman in her masculine into her feminine. So that was my long answer. The short answer is you got to evoke it. Evoke it in her through your own way of being.
It's quite a skill, because it takes like a cultivation of self to be able to be grounded, to be able to be aware. But also there's like a piece in there I hear of like an emotional intelligence as well, to know the moment. When we talk about bringing some play, there's some moments that play is off the cards. It's not a good moment for play, but there's also some moments when it's really perfect.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more, David.
And when you talked about that leadership, like taking charge of something, leadership is a big thing. I think a lot of people talk about leadership in relationship, but what really leapt out to me is, taking care of that thing, whether it's the plumbing, be that the vacation or the dinner, or, in my case, it's been flat pack furniture for the last 3 months, since we moved. You build trust. You build the currency of trust that you are reliable and dependable, and that she can know you as a man of your word, and that you will take care of things, so they don't have to enter into her like to-do list.
Yep, it's so true. And one of the things that I work with guys on, we do this in my boot camp program, and sometimes in the one-on-one coaching I do. But, you could bring that leadership into your logistical life. So it could be the budget, the home maintenance, the recreation, and, what we do for fun or on dates. So you can bring leadership into the what I call logistical domain. You can bring leadership into the emotional domain as well. This is something that guys rarely do. They kind of leave, there's a fight, and then we just hunker down and wait it out. And we kind of wait for her to approach us and come out of the cold shoulder. But you can do that as a man. You can bring leadership to the emotional domain of your life. That's super powerful. And that's, you can do that by reading my book and working with coaches and things like that. And you can bring leadership into the sexual domain. This is actually a workshop I'm giving in October here in San Francisco. But leading in the bedroom, that's another domain in which you can bring leadership. And that's super juicy, super powerful, and just a whole lot of fun.
And that's not really something as men we are, we're not really taught that. No one teaches us like sexual leadership. Sex is such a taboo topic still in our society. And we all enter into sex in this way of, pretending we're not talking about it. Our families shame us about it. So men can be really, like, I don't know, word is like unable or lack the ability or confidence to show up in a level of leadership in the sexual domain with their partners.
It's true. It's true. Guys don't know. It hasn't been modeled. It hasn't been taught. And kind of the one exposure we get to anything even close to sexual leadership might be like sources like 50 Shades of Grey, where, okay, I'm the Dom, and I'm going to lead. And that's great. I mean, I shouldn't denigrate that, because that's not the entree point. That's for advanced. There's whole lots of ways to lead in the bedroom that aren't being Christian Grey with the flogger. And that's what we talk about in the workshop, and we talk a little bit about in the boot camp, is like from that moment to moment, that for a couple that's not into the dark arts, how could a man still lead, and what would that look like? And so, it's a lot about what we said about leadership before, knowing what you want first. A lot of guys are just sort of like, they're kind of focused on her, but they don't actually know what they want to do in the next moment. So they're sort of waiting for her to make the next move or change the position. It's like, no, what do you want to do? And you got to come into that mindset of knowing what you want and like. And sexual leadership can be as simple as, instead of just getting in one position and you're having intercourse, and you're creating variety, and you're the one that's rolling her over and putting her in a different position, every minute or whatever it is. You're the one that is bringing maybe new toys into the bedroom, and they don't have to be crazy. They can be pretty, gentle toys. Like, you can do amazing things with a pillowcase. You can do amazing things with a rope that are all pretty mild, that even beginners can do. And so you can take charge of your sexual life. And there's so much fun that can be had when you do that. But as you pointed out, David, nobody teaches us this stuff. Nobody in the inputs that we do get are movies about BDS, like super extreme BDSM. So a lot for guys to work on in this domain.
Yeah, and like hearing you say that makes me think of just the message. Something that's come up a bit in the men I've spoken to recently is just the message of, like, if our sex lives aren't what we want them to be with our partners, or the level of attraction we're feeling isn't there, like, we can do something about that. That isn't like this fixed thing that means that we have to chuck our relationship away. We can, as you're talking about there, like, we can lead the sexual domain of our relationship to new and expanded places.
Yeah, you glitched there for a second, so I wasn't sure if you were done. I think you are now. Yeah, it's so true. If your sex life isn't where you want, the first question you got to ask yourself is why. There's a reason. It's not just she's become frigid. There's a reason for it. It's probably because she doesn't feel emotionally connected to you. That's like 9 out of 10 times is what it is. But so you got to go figure out what's holding the sexual life back. So it could be a lack of emotional connection. So it's stuff outside the bedroom, usually. And then once you kind of bring that more to neutral or good or great on the stuff outside the bedroom, then you're right. It's like, okay, how can you, I don't know if this experimentation is the right word, but, how can you bring leadership and novelty and expansion into the relationship? And you can. It's just like so many guys are so scared. And this is why I'm putting together a workshop on leading in the bedroom in October for this very reason, because there's just an endless number of guys that can use this kind of education.
Definitely. You mentioned emotional safety and safety in general as one of the the parts of the blueprint. I was going to say pillars, parts of the blueprint, and it feels so, it feels super foundational. The emotional and you said physical and financial, but really focus on the emotional piece. What is emotional safety to you?
Well, I'm going to generalize here about the feminine, so just know that. The feminine, their way to deal with emotion is often unconstrained, and so it's messy in a lot of cases. Like they have their masculine energy to govern that, and everybody's a mix of feminine and masculine and feminine. So women have both, just a different ratio in most cases. So they've got their feminine, which can be unconstrained and a little messy, but often they can govern it, and so it's not always like that. But sometimes it is. It's just too much to handle. And then it gets messy, and it comes out toxically, or they're crying, or just whatever. And most women don't want to be like that, even when they seem very righteous about it. They don't want to be like that. They need some help. Actually, the reason they're blasting it out is because they're in a kind of a crazy way. They're soliciting your help to co-regulate them. In a loving relationship, that's what they're asking for, even when it seems like they want to kill you. So when they blast that out, if you just reject them of like, I can't deal with you right now, just come back, like you're shaming them implicitly. Now it feels like a boundary, but what you're doing is you're hurting her heart and you're shaming her and you're not making space for what's there. It also is going to feel like, because there's the crazy, like the bigness of the emotion, but there's some kernel of truth in there where she's upset about something substantive. And when you're doing this, you're throwing that out as well. So now she doesn't feel like she can even express something to you because you're gonna not hear it and not take it in. So you're not accepting her messiness, and you're also not accepting her the actual core of her pain in the moment and the thing that might actually have some truth to it. And that makes her feel really unsafe. When you tell her, when you try to defend, use like logic and facts to defend against her emotional expression, when you dismiss, when you're like, you're crazy. Why are you overreacting? Like, this is not that big a deal. While it might be factually true in the emotional plane, it's very painful. Like you're looking at it and saying, don't feel the way you actually feel right now. You should not feel this way. That's hard for the feminine to hear, because their feelings are so big. They feel them way more than we do. They feel very real to her. So when when something feels real and the other person's saying you're crazy to feel that way, it's not good. It's not good. So that's what emotional safety is. It's not like emotional safety, creating it is not about taking her abuse or agreeing with everything she said. It's not that. It's just making some space for her emotion without trying to reconcile it to the facts. Is this right? Is this accurate? Does this match the facts? Stop trying to reconcile in the moment everything to facts. Like, just let the emotion be what it is. Make some space for it and be like, wow, baby, I can see this is super upsetting. I didn't realize this, but I'm really feeling you right now. Like that phrase I just uttered, those phrases, I didn't agree or disagree. I didn't take it on if she was blaming me. I didn't do anything other than to be like, wow, I can see this is really hard. Like, let's dig into this, baby. So that's how you create emotional safety, by not judging and shaming and trying to reconcile to the facts right out of the gate. You could do that later, but right out of the gate when it's all fired up, don't do that. That never works. And when you do, it makes her feel super unsafe. And then her heart closes to you, and then her body closes to you. And then shit starts going downhill real fast if you chronically do that to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. As I hear you say this, it's like combined with the practices you talk about around grounding, it like enables a man to be grounded enough to be kind of open and wide and present and have his like brain function active instead of him being kind of ruled by his like fear and his thought loops and his own wounding. And he can stay grounded the moment with her and what she's feeling and create a space where those feelings and emotions can be explored with kind of curiosity without judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a great point, which was like when your reaction starts to take you over, then you're not available for her in her agitated state. You're just like you're lost in your own experience as a man. And so, and then she's like, hello, how about me over here? Like you seem, you're caught up in your reaction and you've totally forgot about me and helping co-regulate me. And what about me? So she feels very alone. This is where you get women who they say they feel alone in relationship, which is really not a good state, man. When your woman, well, when anybody feels alone in relationship, it's not good. It's not good.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. It's like we're experiencing this chronic feeling of like not being listened to, not being understood, not being accepted as we are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that nobody wants that, especially the feminine. Nobody wants it. But because they feel their emotions so much more when we invalidate those emotions, it's just that much more painful. I think that's why it's more painful for the feminine than it is for the masculine. It's because the depth to which they feel their emotions, and then we're denying those emotions when they're actually pretty big.
Because we often are in some way like not seeing that our own emotions are really that important or suppressing them in some way. Whereas, she's like in full acceptance of her feelings, or at least in full willing to be in contact with them. So then to receive us in that
Mm-hmm.
moment of us being like a big kind of cross of like, no, I don't want this. This is wrong.
Yeah.
Or to come with the kind of logic is
Yep.
like a kind of form of like wounding or even like emotional gaslighting. Like, no, your emotions, they shouldn't exist. Like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's just explain this in a way guys that understand. It's the same thing as if you I don't know, you're super horny and you want to be sexual with your woman and she's just like, "Stop, get away from me." And you're like, "Oh, fuck." And it's been like 6 weeks since you guys have been sexual. Like you're hurting and you're like, "This is bullshit. This sucks." And, it's not a perfect analogy, but I think it's good enough. It's you're denying a very basic need when you're not giving her space to be in her emotions. Just like if your woman doesn't want to be sexual with you, she's denying a basic need that you have. I'm not saying that she's supposed to do it. I'm just saying she's denying a basic need that you have, and because you've committed to a monogamous relationship. So it's painful for both parties when they're, when some of those more primal needs are not being met by their partner.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And like when we think about emotional safety, I kind of start to think about vulnerability. And a question I have been asking a number of my guests recently is, do women want men's vulnerability?
Absolutely. But dot dot dot. You have to do it in a masculine style. Yeah. I think and let's just generalize to being with your emotions. Like there's a masculine style of being with your emotions and there's a feminine style of being with your emotions. In both cases, they both masculine and feminine, we feel deeply. Both feel deeply. We want to feel deep. We want to feel our emotions deeply and be in contact with them. But often a purely feminine being is then gonna she has to go external with those, and sometimes it's calm and sometimes it's toxic, but they have to go external, and because men, we're islands and they're systems, so they're nodes in a system, and the juice of life is what is the spaces in between for them. That's why they have to externalize. That's not the way for us. We go internal to our island and we handle our shit. So for them, that masculine style of being with their emotions, expressing their emotions, being vulnerable is going to be more of a broadcast. It's going to be more of a blasting out like a fire hose, and that's just how the pure feminine does it. And then in any particular woman, there'll be a mix of masculine and feminine that governs like what that actually looks like. For the men, we want to feel deeply. But the masculine style of being vulnerable and being with your emotions is to then share judiciously, which means sometimes I choose just to suck it up and keep it to myself. And there's the masculine burden is to suffer in silence at times. Like, you a bunch of guys going off to fight a battle in a war. You don't want them whining about shit. Sometimes you just got to suck it up, and that's part of your masculine persona. But it doesn't mean we're stoic and we suck up everything and share nothing. You want to share judiciously. So you choose when to share. When does this help her know me more of what's going on my inside? Like if it's going on my inside, there's some part of it leaking out that she's sensing. So for me to share what's going on inside is actually super calming for her, because then she's like, okay, I sensed this. I wasn't sure what it was. You told me this, and they match. And I'm like, and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. And they feel close to you. So you share judiciously, which means sometimes you suck it up and keep it to yourself. Other times you choose to share when it creates more connection, and you're very succinct about it. That's another quality here. You're succinct about it. You say it in a couple of sentences. Yeah, I'm suffering over this situation at work. I didn't get promoted, and I just feel like I'm inadequate. I thought I was really crushing it, and maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, and I feel fucking incompetent right now. Like that's a judicious share. You don't go on and on. So that's another quality of a masculine style. And then the third is you don't lay a burden on anybody else to make you feel better about it. Like this is where we start to blame our woman. Like you're making me feel this way. And it's like, no, nobody can make you feel any way. You allow yourself to do that. So you're not sharing, getting, with the end goal of getting her to change. You're sharing to just show yourself, but you can handle it. You're like, yeah, I'm really hurting right now, and I don't know what to do. I know that I'll handle it, but I'm right now, I feel a little lost. So you're not putting the burden on anybody else. Those are all the qualities of men's vulnerability and emotional expression that I think are distinctly masculine and very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And it's almost, there's a kind of reverse that you've probably seen this a lot. There's two things. Is you mentioned kind of that suffering in silence, that just sucking up everything, that feeling of not being allowed, our emotions not being important or valid, that can be so damaging to a man. Or there's also the one I see more kind of in internet cultures more and more, where men are not necessarily blaming their woman, but women in general for the state of their life or the deficiency that they're experiencing. Like, like, oh, I don't have a girl, I don't have a woman, I don't have a partner, and it's because women want too much from relationships and like men in this day and age.
It's kind of, I just find it I get disgusted at that approach. It's weak. And I would say this to those men who say that. So much more is possible for you guys, but you gotta step up and take responsibility for it. Women are going to be how they are, and the truth is that you got hurt by one woman. It's not all women. Like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I want to inspire those guys. I want to be denigrating in some way, but I'm going to hold back on that and say I want to be inspiring to these guys. So much more is possible for you. You can have super rewarding relationships with an amazing woman. They are out there. And it's down to you evoking those, that higher state in her. And you can do this, guys. You can learn these. Don't give up and just say all women and I'm going to shut it off and I'm going to become a MGTOW, which is men going their own way, MGTOW. So much more is possible for you guys. I want you to step up and take it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a kind of childlike way of being, and I don't mean that to men to kind of belittle them, but it's like a way in which we deal with things immaturely. I think you've mentioned it through here, is like taking responsibility for how you show up in relationship, taking responsibility for the relationship, or even how your partner is showing up. And it's also this part of the kind of, I see, and I'm kind of hearing through what a lot of you said today, the kind of masculine energy that we can embody is taking responsibility for this, like our life and what's happening, what we like and what we don't like, instead of like pointing the finger out at somebody in the way that, often young children do, or teenagers or adolescents would.
I didn't catch any of that, David.
I said it's something that's kind of coming through what you're saying is this, taking responsibility for our lives or taking responsibility for the states of our relationship instead of doing what, kind of children, adolescents do. And that's like pointing the finger outwards.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, I'm taking my marbles and going home. Yeah, just like, man, you don't want to spend your whole life alone. You don't want to spend your whole life in resentment against women, which is a silly generalization because not everybody's the same. And, you're just these poor guys that like maybe they had two different women they tried to date, and the woman was like, you're not masculine enough for me, or you don't lead enough for me, or whatever. And then they're like super hurt. And so they just, like I said, they pack up their marbles and go home from the whole relationship world. And it doesn't have to be like that, guys. Be powerful, like work with David, work with me, work with other coaches. And there's some well-known practices and tools and principles that you can embody, and things will be different. I guarantee it. They will be different for you.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't have to be, relationships don't have to be doom and gloom. As we've talked about, GS is really detailed beautifully. There is so many, as everything that this episode has been is about how you as a man have the power to shift your relationship. And we've only talked about relationship here. We haven't even talked about career and life and purpose and so forth. But it's like we have agency, we have power, and not the power, the sort of power that is power over others. It's the power to create and to be with others, to elevate life for ourselves and other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, couldn't say it better myself. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, GS, I'm going to say a big thank you. It's been wonderful to kind of talk to you and all explore these concepts and ideas that I've touched on in the book. And I'm sure the listeners are really excited about knowing more about you, where they can work with you, and also some details about the kind of workshops and retreats you've got coming up.
Yeah, well, check out gsyoungblood.com. You get all the information about what I have going on. And Instagram, gsyoungblood, MIR. But what I want to point the listeners to is my boot camp. I have one starting June 26th. I don't know if this episode will go out before then or not, but would love to have a few extra guys so I can finish the marketing part of it. But it's a powerful program. You do it with a cohort of other men. And I really take you deeper into the masculine blueprint. And so it's work that I've been super excited to put out in the world. I do have a workshop in October. It'll go on the website very soon as I just lock down a couple of dates for my female assistants who are going to help us. But the workshop is going to be about leading in the bedroom. And I did a smaller version of this last year, and it was super powerful. I did a less sexuality-oriented one in February in Sayulita, Mexico, and we blew the doors off it. So this one's going to be even bigger. So I'm very excited about that. So, and if you haven't heard of me before, just go to get the book on the website. The Masculine in Relationship is my first book. It's the primary book that everybody uses to get introduced to my work, and you can get that on Amazon. And those are the ways to find my work out there.
Beautiful, thank you. And what I've read of the book, it's been super inspirational. And I've heard. One of the reasons I had GS on here is because I heard him on other people's podcasts and was just like, this is a guest I have to have on my podcast to talk about this. These aspects are so important, So, men, I've listened to many of his videos on Instagram. So really head over there. The details of everything he said are going to be in the show notes just down below, so you can check that out. What I will say before we wrap up, guests, is actually listeners, is that if you're listening to this episode, the chances are that, the relationship, the connection you're desiring isn't quite there. So share this episode with a friend of yours, because the chances are if you're a guy, other guys who are complaining about the same thing you're complaining about when you guys hang out together. So instead of just hiding off, feeling shamed and listening to it alone, send the episode over to a man who this would benefit and this could help him in his relationship, so that the two of you can have different conversations. Instead of conversations of complaining, you can talk about conversations of how you are succeeding in your relationship, how you are transforming your relationship, how much you're enjoying your relationship. Because trust me, there are much better conversations to be having with your buddies. But after you've said that, I will let you guys get on with the rest of your day and say thank you and ciao, ciao. I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. Especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them, share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.